case. I got baptized when I was 10. I started pioneering when I was 11. And Stephen Lett taught my first pioneer school. Yeah, I went out in service with him, and that was embarrassing. He's crazy. He was completely out of touch with people. I knew in my younger years, I met all of the governing body members. There's some stuff about our family you should know. And the stuff about the family that I needed to know was that they had all been sexually abused by their father, who was an elder and a regular pioneer.
I had this extraordinary privilege to interview Dena today. Dena has a story that will blow your mind. I mean, seriously, she was trained by Stephen Lett. She knew all the governing body members. She was baptized at the age of 10. As the story goes on, you will find that she was quite an incredible person who had to go through a lot in life in order to get where she is today. I do apologize for some of the technical problems that we had to face. Unfortunately, the quality of my screen is really bad, but she is quite clear. So I don't want to redo it because what she shared is truly valuable, and I appreciate your patience with this. But without further ado, please give full attention to Dena and her story. Your story is quite incredible, and the fact that you came out of it the way you did will truly inspire many. So please tell us, how did you become associated with Jehovah's Witnesses?
I was born in. I came from 5 generations of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm pretty sure they're like founding families of the religion. All of my family is in all of my family. My dad was an elder all the time when I was growing up. Uncles were elders. My grandparents, cousins, literally everybody is one of Jehovah's Witnesses. That I know of. I was the first to leave that I know of. I'm happy to say that my brother left about 4 years ago, I think. So now I have a brother again. But other than that, wow. I came from hardcore as in as you get, generations in. So
how long were you when you got baptized?
10.
Ooh.
I was 10 when I got baptized.
That's very young. Very
well,
young.
When you're so indoctrinated in the religion, getting baptized is not a question. It's not a, are you ready? Or how's your relationship with Jehovah? Or, are you ready for this commitment? It's like, all right, already. I mean, if I could have been baptized at 5, I probably would have.
Yeah.
So as soon as you're able to answer the questions, that's as soon as you get baptized. And that was the case in my case. I got baptized when I was 10. I think I waited to the 6 months that you're supposed to wait, and then I started regular pioneering.
Oh, wow. Do you have siblings?
I have a younger brother and a younger sister.
How old were they when they got baptized?
Probably around the same age. Probably around the same 10, 11, 12, wow, something like that.
Your family expectation, basically, to progress.
Definitely the expectation is everybody's going to regular pioneer. My brother needs to go to Bethel, missionary. All those lofty goals were set for us literally from the time we were born. Literally. My dad talks about my first talk. I was like 5 in the ministry school. Publishing, I was a publisher, super, super, super young. That was what the expectation was. So
yeah. And how did you progress in the congregation? Did you become a pioneer? Did you?
Yep, I started pioneering when I was 11. It was a tough area to pioneer in. We grew up on Long Island. We were actually
pioneer when you were 11.
Homeschooled.
Homeschooled. Wow.
Homeschooled. So that gives you time to put Jehovah first, right? So they were forming a Spanish group in the hall that we were in, and they needed help. There was not tons of support in the English congregation for going out and service, the long hours and everything that I needed. So I actually joined the Spanish group when I was 12. And that was a lot of time dedicated to preaching.
So I'm assuming that taught you Spanish.
Yeah. So I learned Spanish. I learned Spanish when I was 12.
I see.
Since it was a group, I had probably like 25 Bible studies most of the time. I mean, during those years, the requirement was 90 hours, but we were doing 120 just to keep up with all of the Bible studies that we had. Spanish is a little bit different than English. They have a culture that's they love the Bible. And then you have this little white girl that speaks Spanish. Everybody wants to study. So
Wow.
that's what I did.
And how old were you when you had that many Bible studies?
12 and 13.
No.
Not kidding. I'm not kidding. I was using the literature to help teach myself Spanish. So back in that time, it was the Red Book. It was the Live Forever book is what we were still studying with people.
Yes.
And I take the first chapter and highlight it and, understand the grammar and look up all the words and stuff. And most of the Bible studies were kind of like all started at the same time. So I would go over the same section, the same paragraphs 25 times during the week. And by the time I was done with that section, my vocabulary was really great.
Well, there is. I'm glad you're mentioning this because there are benefits.
That has been one of the best gifts that I took away, I think.
You've learned Spanish. You probably mastered it.
Yep, I learned it young, and I loved being in the Spanish congregation. That was all good. The tragedy didn't happen until later.
Right.
But that time, I loved people. I was enjoying going out in service. So when I was ready to go to Pioneer School, my parents didn't want me to go in Spanish because obviously that wasn't my first language. And I, in the beginning, you're not quite as fluent. So I went to Pioneer School in English, and Stephen Lett taught my first Pioneer School.
Ooh, look at that. So, okay, the first question I think everybody's going to ask, is he like this all the time?
All the time.
No.
When he's eating, he's like that. I'm not going to lie. I opened my eyes when he was praying, and he prays like that too, with his eyes closed, but his facial expression's all weird and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible. I went out in service with him, and that was embarrassing. He's crazy.
Well, outside of the over-exaggerated facial expressions, which for him are normal, what would you say is crazy about him?
He was completely out of touch with people. So absorbed in his own world, no recollection, no recognition of how people are responding. He's not trying to touch anybody's hearts. He's not trying to be a shepherd. I just had a feeling like we were all invisible. Like he didn't even really care. I even remember thinking at the time, because at the time I was only like 13 or 14, something like that. I even remember at the time thinking, this is who's going to rule over us? Because I don't even think he realizes we're here. Just a real disconnect with humanity.
And I don't know, maybe I never met the guy. I don't know what he's like, but what I see is, like you're saying, somebody who's so disconnected from reality that it's really a company man that was created by the organization and who cannot have any critical thinking skills. He's just following what's in the book.
He's so absorbed in himself that he literally doesn't. I remember going door to door with him, and his presentation, he would just go into some weird presentation, and the householder would just be like, who are you? What are you talking about? Yeah. It was not any sort of, like I said, completely disconnected from humanity, in my opinion.
Very interesting. Thank you for that feedback. Very few people had the privilege to work with
the privilege, right? The privilege,
members, right? So back then it was like, wow, you must have been a celebrity sharing that story.
well, being so close to Bethel, I knew in my younger years, I met all of the governing body members, because they would either come out for memorial, give the memorial talk, special talks. They were always, we lived in the Hamptons. So I don't know if you know where that is, but that is the richest, nicest, that's where all the wealthy people go on vacation. So of course, all of the governing body take advantage of coming to visit anybody that they know is in that area, because it's a nice area. So they were frequently out there. I've met most of them. All the
If you
old
met
ones
most
anyway.
of them, then I'm going to skip a little bit to the question I wanted to ask later on.
Okay.
What would you tell governing body members if they actually listen to you?
They don't listen. They don't care. That's the truth. They don't care. I only met one governing body member that I thought actually had a heart. His name was Martin Putzinger. He had gone through the concentration camps. He was German. He had a really thick accent. He was a sweet human. He was a very sweet human. I remember sitting next to him at an assembly when I was a little girl, and him helping me look up scriptures. And I remember him looking me in the eyes, and I remember him saying, "You have pioneer eyes. You will serve Jehovah your whole life," in his clipped accent. He was a beautiful soul. He was a beautiful human. But the rest of them, they are egotistical maniacs. Every single
Really?
one of them. Very.
Would you say that they're evil men? Some people call them evil. Would you say that they're evil?
Conceited and self-centered for sure. I don't know if they intentionally think that I don't know if they're intentionally being evil, but I believe that they believe that they're gods. I think that their position has completely gone to their heads. All of them, I feel like, had a disconnect with the people, with the flock, with the people that they're supposed to be serving, the people that they're supposed to be leading. They weren't shepherds. They were harsh. All of them were.
Do you think they actually believe everything that they teach, or do you think that it's like they're just going with what the organization says and they have to uphold
They are
this?
the organization.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
They
that's true.
are the organization. I think I think the power's gone to their head, honestly. So yes, I think they believe it, but they act more like dictators. So I just think I always had the feeling, like I said, the one German brother, I think he was the only one that I ever felt any sort of emotion really out of. The rest of them were all very, very hard, very hard. That's the word I use. Like emotionally hard, like strict, hard. So no, so what would I tell them? I don't think you can tell those people anything. I don't think they care.
Interesting. Nobody ever answered that. That's fair. But you knowing them, you would know better. So here's the question. So what was your turning point? What caused you to deviate, since you've been in many generations in this religion? And as you know, that's only one generation, technically speaking. But
I come
must
from
have been
overlapping generations.
right. So must have been a real shock for the family, for your parents. Like, tell us what was your turning point?
I have to tell the whole story before the turning point even makes sense.
Okay.
So, so should I start from the beginning?
Yeah, start from the beginning. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
So far we know you've been young. You started pioneering when you were super young. 25
yeah.
Bible studies. What's next?
Okay, so then what comes next is getting married.
Okay.
Because you can't do more in the organization unless you have a husband. There's only
How
so
old were
much a
you?
woman can do. All I can do is pioneer unless I have a really good husband with the right resume, right? So of course, dating in the truth is a nightmare. It's a disaster. There is no courting process. It's, hurry up and get married. And as long as they have the right qualifications and you have the right qualifications, get it done as fast as possible. So my family, I believe that I came from a pretty good family. I came from a very loving family. My dad was an elder. I believe that my dad and my uncles, I believe that they were righteous people. I think they really wanted to do the right thing. They fully believed in the religion with their whole hearts. I think they still do. So then when it came to dating, I was pretty sure that I would never be allowed to date anybody that they didn't all approve of. And I was pretty much right. So my dad and uncles were in construction and they would apprentice, young brothers, during the summers and everything. And so there was this one young brother who had worked with them for several summers, and he was approvable. They approved of him. He was about 10 years older than me. So when I also worked in the family business, right? So I show up to do construction work, and one day I show up and I'm alone with this brother, and I'm like, this is weird. And so he proceeds to explain to me how he's already talked to my dad and my uncles, and he's already told them that he would like to marry me. And so that's why we're painting together, is so that he can tell me that this is what we're gonna do.
No.
So, not even kidding. So,
How old were
obviously
you?
17. I was 17.
It's like a pre-arranged marriage.
About as close to that as I think you can get. You know what? And I don't blame my family. I believe that they were trying to do the right thing. I mean, I don't know.
It was the right
They
thing.
approved. They approved of it, though. And on my side too, I knew him. I had pioneered with his sisters,
Okay.
so I was really good friends with his younger sisters. And so they were excited. They thought it was a great idea. And, I joke about everybody having the right resumes, but, that's a reality.
Yeah.
I don't think he was an elder yet, but he was a regular pioneer. He was in the Spanish congregation. He was at least a ministerial servant, if not an elder. He might have already been an elder. I can't remember. But he had done international construction work. He'd already gone to like 3 or 4 countries on international construction projects. That sounded great to me. I loved that too. So, resumes match, get it done. So I think we were dating. I think we, dated 5 months maybe. And I got married right as soon as I had turned 18. And in that time, there was no alone time. We were not alone. There was no physical hand holding, kissing. I mean, it was as clean as you could get. I
Did you
remember
hold hands at least?
No. No, he studied with me though while we were dating. And okay, so when you're homeschooled and you're growing up in the religion, that's what you think, that's super clean, right? That's what you're supposed to do, right? You're doing things the right way. And so I just assumed that all of that was because he was super spiritual, right? We want to keep everything clean, do everything Jehovah's way. So yes, no hand holding, nothing like that until we were married. So from there, this is where the story starts going crazy. So as literally the day after I got married, we had not even gone on our honeymoon yet. My sister-in-laws, my friends, they were like, okay, there's some things about our family you should probably know.
Okay.
So I came from an innocent world of my family being righteous people, loving people. I did not suffer any sort of abuse in my family or anything like that. Quite the contrary. They were overly loving and overly protective. But that's the extent of, that's the extent. They're overly protective was their crime, not any sort of abuse or anything like that. Right. So my sister-in-laws are like, there's some stuff about our family you should know. And the stuff about the family that I needed to know was that they had all been sexually abused by their father, who was an elder and a regular pioneer.
So this is not your family. This is his family?
Yeah, his family. My father-in-law, basically.
Your father-in-law, basically.
My father-in-law molested his children, his sons and his daughters. Then they said that their grandfather also had molested them, who had been an elder for probably 60 years and a regular pioneer. And they had another brother who had multiple personality disorder. He had so many psychological problems that he couldn't even come to the wedding because he couldn't be in the room as his father. And so I get all of this dumped on me, and I'm like, I didn't know that things like that happened in the congregation. I thought I thought we were clean. I thought we were different. You know, we're not like the Catholic Church with all their problems, you know. So to have this dumped on me that this is a family full of problems that was a lot. And I'm 18 too. You know, I'm 18 and I got married yesterday. And so having all of this on us is a big deal. And part of the reason why that is an even bigger deal of the story is because the person that I married, I'm pretty sure now, obviously none of this was ever talked about. We didn't have any sort of conversations like this or anything, but I'm pretty sure that he was probably gay and didn't know it. Our personal relationship was, he didn't want to touch me with a 10-foot pole. We ended up going to Mexico for international work after 5 months, and he would go camping with the single brothers almost every single weekend. I was not invited. I know for a fact that one of those brothers was disfellowshipped for being a homosexual years later. So, you know, of course, here I am, 18. I have no idea what's wrong. I just think, you know, something's wrong with me.
But it's like every weekend we were doing service and meetings, and he was going camping all the time.
Yeah, well, he'd go camping on like Saturday and then be there for Sunday, or, you know, take one of the extra personal days. Yeah, I know. And there was even a sister in Bethel. She was like, you know, I know you're newly married and this must be hard on you. I was like, I don't know. So anyway, so that's where the first marriage headed. So when we left Mexico, we were at the branch for 6 months there. When we came back, obviously I am confused. I do not know what is wrong. I don't understand what's wrong. In retrospect, I do, but at the time I had no idea why he appeared to hate me so much. I'm assuming that it's probably because he got married hoping that it would fix things. I didn't. And so he became extremely, extremely hateful. He was one of the most abusive humans I have ever met. He was hateful. He was mean. He was very, very, very emotionally abusive. And so we were married for 3 years. And then I finally was getting to the point where I was like, I can't live like this my whole life. I can't. So I went to my dad, I went to my uncles, and I was like, we're having problems. And the response was, no, shh, don't talk about it, sweetheart. We all have problems. Just pray to Jehovah, be a submissive wife. Jehovah sees everything. Don't worry, you know, just keep moving.
Yeah.
So that was that. And so it got so intense that I was going to snap. So I did. I snapped. And of course, being that I'm still in this, you know, theocratic way of doing things, I needed a scriptural divorce. Could have just divorced him, but I have to get a scriptural divorce.
Of course.
So
government doesn't matter.
Exactly. So I got disfellowshipped. I was 21 at the time. So obviously I am the first one in my entire family to ever be disfellowshipped that I know of.
Yes.
Obviously that was super hard, but so I have a worldly boyfriend and I get pregnant. So here I am disfellowshipped and I'm pregnant, and I could not imagine raising my baby without family. I couldn't imagine raising her without grandparents, without cousins, because I had a great family. My family was very loving and very supportive. So I married the kids' dad, because of course that's also what you do in the religion, is you marry everybody, right? So I married the kids' dad, and I work on getting reinstated. So
of course, I'm assuming you divorced the first guy. And
yeah.
How did he remain in the congregation, I'm assuming?
Oh yeah, he kept his privileges and everything. I'm the crazy one. I'm the one that left.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so he kept all of his privileges, When I got reinstated, I actually had to get reinstated in the same congregation. So watching this person up on the stage and everything, that was super hard. Okay, wait, there's one other thing that I want to mention too. So let me go back to the first marriage. Once my sister-in-laws told me about the abuse in the family, I could not keep that to myself. I believed in keeping the congregation clean. I couldn't just shut up about that. So I went to the elders in the congregation that we were in at the time, and I said, I guess, I'm sure you guys don't know this, but I'm now privy to all of this information. I now know all of this, and so I need to tell you, right? They already knew. And their answer was that the father-in-law, had dedicated or had donated the land that the Kingdom Hall was built on. And being that it was the Hamptons, it was quite literally worth millions of dollars.
Oh,
and
wow.
because he was prominent and because he had donated the land, we're just going to let Jehovah take care of this. That was the answer that I got. So if you want to know some of the wake-up points, that was a punch in the gut. That was like,
It
because
just
he
keeps
donated
building one
land,
and
he gets
another,
to do this, and that's okay.
oh boy.
So that was one of my moments. Getting reinstated, that was another one of my moments.
So you came back?
Oh yeah. I got
Oh,
disfellowshipped when I was 21, and I wanted to make sure that my kids were raised in the truth. Maybe I'm willing to sacrifice my own everlasting life, but I'm not going to sacrifice my kids. So I went back. I wanted them to have family. I still was completely indoctrinated. What am I going to raise them Catholic? I mean, I didn't at the time see any other options. Of course, now I have a baby that I'm responsible for. So I went to get reinstated. So that's another whole story. Apparently, at the time, so I kind of found these pieces out as I was going. The presiding overseer of that congregation that I had been disfellowshipped from, he had some serious family problems and didn't qualify to be an elder anymore. His wife was an alcoholic. His teenage daughter had rumored, or people thought that she had an abortion. So, and she was kind of crazy anyway, but he didn't qualify really to be an elder anymore. And so my dad and my uncles, being the righteous men that they were trying to get him to step down. So I had been going to the meetings for a year, no contact with all my family. They're very strict. We're going to do things Jehovah's way. I might have got a nod while I was at the meeting, but that was about it. So finally, when I hit the 1 year mark, my dad says, it's time for you to turn in. You should probably turn a letter in, your reinstatement letter, if you're ready. So I did. I wrote up my letter and I handed it to the presiding overseer, and he looks at it and he rips it up in front of me and throws it in the trash. And I go, what? And he goes, ask your dad. So I go to my dad and I'm like, what? He ripped up my letter. What's happening? So, obviously my dad's still not really talking to me, but he tells me that let's just wait for the circuit overseer to come. We're trying to handle this. He kind of just briefly kind of explained that the situation with the presiding overseer and his family. And so basically, so the circuit overseer comes, nothing happens. My dad and uncles step down as being elders. And the presiding overseer calls me and he says, okay, you're reinstated now. No meeting.
No explanation.
Nope. So I get the story from my family after the fact. Basically, he blackmailed them with me. Basically, because they were trying to get him to step down as being an elder because he didn't qualify. He basically put them in a position where he says, if you guys don't step down and get out of my way, she's not going to ever get reinstated. That's our spirit-directed organization right there.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So that was the second oh my goodness moment where it was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Seriously, this is how we do things in Jehovah's house?
Not
But
sure what kind
again,
of spirit they were drinking, but must have been strong.
but again, what you hear when you're fully indoctrinated is, well, Jehovah sees everything. Jehovah will take care of it in his own time. So, we're just going to let it be because we're just going to let it be. All right. So that was kind of my second, what the heck is wrong with this organization moment. So I'm married the second time. He's worldly. Honestly, that wasn't very fair to him either, because when we met, I'm in the world, right? And then I get pregnant and I go back to Jehovah's Witnesses. So I'm a completely different person than what I was when we met. He was not at all happy with that at all. He was the one that tried to stop me from going to meetings, who would, throw clothes out, tell me, choose me or God. I mean, he was not on board with that. And so we were married for 5 years and we had 3 kids. And then he left mainly because of religious issues. It was a huge religious conflict. So I have 3 little kids. They were 3, 2, and 1. And I'm divorced the second time.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this, because people think that only those who are in the religion are affected. And yet here, years later, the indoctrination is still there. The injustice happened, and it affects not only you and your kids, but also your new husband and his well-being and his mental state and his marriage and everything.
Obviously he
The
wants to
ripple
celebrate
effect is
holidays.
crazy.
I mean, ripping apart families is an understatement of what it does.
Yeah, how did you manage the Christmas and birthdays and all that stuff?
Oh, I was a righteous Jehovah's Witness. I didn't do any of that.
But he had a right to, let's say, buy gifts for his kids. Did he do that?
He did. It was definitely hard. It was, had it not been for the religion, who knows what might have happened with that marriage. I really do attribute most of it to the religion. Okay, so here I am. I'm divorced for the second time. At this point, I think I was probably like 26 or 27. And I've got these 3 small kids. So, that's a great position to be in the religion, right? Divorced twice. That's horrible. Who's going to want the woman who's divorced with 3 small kids? Well, one comes along. He was the son of a circuit overseer, and he was 20 years older than me.
Whoa.
He lived in a different state. Yep, he was 48. And he lived in a different state. His parents, my future in-laws, the retired circuit overseers, were in my Spanish congregation. And so they were like, oh, we have a son. And the son's like, oh, I need a wife. So he was in a different state. We dated by phone for 6 months, and then we get married. So now I'm married the 3rd time to a very spiritual brother who's 20 years older than me, with 3 small kids. The kids were like 3, she was like 4, 3, and 2 or something like that when I married the kids' stepdad.
Must have been an emotional roller coaster. My gosh, back and forth, and just going to the Kingdom Hall and feeling the pressure and judgment and looks and whatever.
It was, but just keep going forward. Just keep trusting in Jehovah. Just keep going. Just keep going. So we were also in the Spanish congregation. All my kids spoke fluent Spanish. Let's see. So from there, we decided to move to the Dominican Republic to serve where the need was great. So that was great. I wanted my kids to have a living outside of the U.S. experience. I had always wanted to be a missionary. At that point, I was back to regular pioneering again, and that just seemed like that was a good option. It was good for the kids. It was good to have a lifestyle that was all around full-time service, and that was a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were in the Dominican Republic for 4 years, and since day one, the 3rd husband was a severe alcoholic. We moved to the Dominican Republic, and then he got prescription painkillers. So prescription medications combined with alcohol is a really bad combination. And he was the type of person that was a very violent alcoholic.
Oh boy.
So we eventually got to the point, okay, well, I couldn't hide bruises. You can't hide a black eye. And so one of the elders in the congregation in the Dominican Republic, he's like, you're going to have to say something about this, because he'd been publicly intoxicated before, and I was frequently bruised. So I told the brothers, and they met with him. They deleted him as an elder, deleted him as a pioneer, obviously, and he was publicly reproved. They told me later the only reason why they didn't disfellowship him is because they were afraid of his mental stability. They were afraid that if they disfellowshipped him, he might commit suicide or something. So they publicly reproved him instead of disfellowshipping him. So he was furious with me for not keeping things private and confidential. So the next day after they announced it, the next day I was out. Actually, I was out preaching with the kids. And when I came back, he had packed up all of his clothes. He wiped out all of the bank accounts. He deleted all of my work emails, which basically meant I had no ability to work, cleared out the bank accounts, and went back to the States, leaving me and 3 kids in the Dominican Republic with no money, no means of supporting ourselves or anything. So at this point, I was going to try to stick it out in the Dominican Republic because we had a great life there. The kids had tons of friends, but that's also awkward because now your reputation is all weird and you don't have scriptural grounds. It's not a scriptural divorce. And so, I mean, you can imagine what a nightmare this is. I mean, here I am now. At this point, I think the kids were about 13, 12, and 11. So we're here by ourselves in the Dominican Republic. My family's opinion was that since there was no scriptural grounds for divorce, that I needed to figure out how to make it work. In their defense, I had already been divorced twice. So
yeah,
they were just like, all right, you need to get your act together and stop divorcing everybody. But it wasn't me. I mean, he was the one that left. One that left. So he goes back to Colorado. I stayed in the Dominican Republic for a couple of months, and then I needed to work. I had to figure out how to support us, how to get our life back. So a friend loaned me money and she paid for the tickets, and we went to California. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start working, get our financial life together because I'm a single mom with the 3 kids now. And so he was in Colorado. That was our home base. He had been there for about 6 months. I'm in California. I start working with the kids. Out of the blue, the kids' dad calls, the kids' biological dad. He had not seen the kids. He had seen the kids, I think, twice in 10 years. He had not paid any child support the whole time. So basically, he's a deadbeat dad. He owed tons of child support. But he calls out of the blue and says, can I visit the kids? Can the kids visit? So I had never believed in bashing the kids' biological father because I think that's psychologically unhealthy. So I say, hey, okay, yep, that's okay. That's a good idea. So he came and he picked them up and he kept them. I find out later that the stepdad, the brother, called him and said that I was not in a place to support the kids, that I was mentally unstable, and that if he loved his kids, he would take them. So out of an act of vindictiveness, I'm assuming because I took his privileges away, he decided to take my life away. So now I have a cross-country custody battle because he's in Florida. The custody orders are out of Colorado. and I'm in California. Then he picked them up from the airport in Nevada. So technically, it's like literally a jurisdictional nightmare. I tried to talk to him, when I started talking to attorneys, they were like, this is going to be, you're not a legal resident of California. You haven't been there long enough. This is Colorado custody orders. The kids are in Florida. I mean, it was a nightmare. So then I couldn't even do anything right away at first either, because he had legal time of visitation. So until he had surpassed his time of visitation, there wasn't even really anything legally that I could do to try to get the kids back or anything. So as soon as his visitation time, his legal visitation time was up, I was in Florida with my custody orders. I go to the police station and the police are like, you're not a Florida resident. This is a Colorado order. There is nothing we can do to enforce this order. They're like, maybe if you go back and get an emergency custody order, we might be able to do something with an emergency custody order, but we can't do anything about this. So I go back to Colorado to try to get this emergency custody order, right? And I'm assuming that because that's my home congregation, that's my home base, right? I'm assuming that I'll at least be able to crash on somebody's couch, or I've got friends there, people that have known me for 20 years. So I go back to Colorado to get the emergency custody order. Of course, I go to the meetings while I'm there, because this whole time I am fully one of Jehovah's people. Mm-hmm. I am fully one of Jehovah's people. I still believe that this is the truth. I believed that even with the custody battle, I actually wasn't super, I mean, my heart was blowing up because I missed my kids. I love my kids. I miss my kids. But in my heart, I thought, oh, Jehovah's totally going to take care of this. Jehovah's not going to let my kids get raised in the world. I mean, obviously, I'm going to talk to the brothers, and religion's an issue in the custody battle. So they're going to give me support so that we can defend our rights to raise our children in the truth. I mean, I totally thought that this is going to be Jehovah's. We've got this. This is fine. So I'm in Colorado. I go to the meetings and I get nothing. I don't get hi. I don't get hugs. And in the Spanish congregation, everybody hugs you. So I get nothing. I'm raising my hand. Nobody calls on me. I'm like, what the heck? Well, I find out it's because, so my ex-father-in-law was a retired circuit overseer, and he knows how to work the system. So when the ex-husband, when his son got publicly reproved and deleted as an elder and everything, you know how there's a letter that follows you, right? Well, my father-in-law took that letter and had it go to a different congregation. Then they had it go to a different congregation. So by the time it got to the actual congregation where he was, it was a clean letter. It was a clean letter that didn't say he had just been reproved for domestic violence, that he's been deleted as an elder and a pioneer. It just says, oh, this brother just came from the Dominican Republic. So the local congregation doesn't know what he had done. And he told everybody that I was an apostate, that the reason why he left is because I was an apostate. So he tells everyone I'm apostate. So now everyone thinks I'm an apostate, and they won't say hi. They won't call on me for meetings. I got a complete cold shoulder, and I went to the elders. I said, this is me. You know me. I love Jehovah. What do I do to clear my reputation? And it was the coldest, most hurtful. They knew me. There was not an ounce of love in those men's hearts whatsoever. They were just like, well, if you're innocent, it'll come out in time. So
before you keep going, I just want to ask one thing. Do you regret going to the elders with this problem?
No, I don't, because I think that's a messed up rule to put on people, first of all. But you know what? I did believe in keeping the congregation clean. You can't do stuff like that. You can't be up on the stage giving assembly parts and be an alcoholic wife beater. That's Jehovah's not okay with that.
Right. But when you see the reaction of the elders and what they did with the situation, and
Yeah.
how it turned out. Do you think they did the right thing?
I think they did the right thing in their world. At the time, I felt like it was the right thing. Was it the right thing? Actually, you know what? Probably was the right thing to do. You know, if it were a spiritual organization, if it was God's organization, you can't let stuff like that happen. That takes away the validity of it being the truth.
Right.
No,
Right.
you can't. You have to remove uncleanness. You cannot let sin happen. The problem is that they correct one sin and turn right around and do another one because
So
it's not the truth.
so the many women, they have a hard time reporting their abusive husbands to the elders, because they're always afraid that, okay,
Yeah.
even if he loses the privileges, he's gonna be worse to me afterwards. He's gonna turn against me,
Yes.
and it's gonna get worse instead of getting better. Who cares about the privileges? But at least he's not gonna be more abusive. And I think in your case, that's a perfect example where they did remove his privileges because they didn't want, an abusive person to
Yeah.
be, giving parts at the meeting saying, "Be a good husband."
Exactly.
But at the same time, what he did after is the very fear that most women have, that whether
Exactly.
he's gonna leave me, or he's gonna beat me up even more, or he's gonna be resentful. And it's something that obviously the organization will never take any responsibility for.
No, but in my heart, I knew all those were going to be potential consequences too. I mean, I obviously I hadn't said anything before. This was not something new. You know, I eventually, I know I would have said something because I had very deep conversations with myself about how wrong this situation is. And like I said, I came from a righteous family. They believed in keeping the
Yes.
organization clean, so I knew that if I had asked them for their advice would have been, you need to say something about this because this person doesn't qualify. And so you need to say something regardless of the personal consequences. And so I think that's the viewpoint that I had, knowing full well he's not going to take this very lightly.
Right. Right.
His the ego can't handle that. And I mean, I didn't think he would take it to that extreme, but I mean, I was well aware that that was a very likely consequence.
So now you're in this congregation, but you know that there is also a letter that comes from the elders. This is what you say or what he said about you. It's
Mhm.
not as strong as the letter that comes from the congregation that you came before. So he can say, "Oh, you're an apostate," but it's just an accusation, unless
Well,
we
my letter
actually have.
wasn't there. I wasn't officially in that congregation, so they didn't have my letter.
Right. Okay. So they didn't know. They just believed him.
They just believed him. They just took his word for it because I wasn't there. He'd
I got
already
it.
been there for 6 months. My father-in-law did his fancy footwork to make sure that the elders didn't see the real letter.
Yeah.
That's so so here's some more punches to the gut. So now I'm like, what in the world? This is this is all wrong. So the only person who stands up for me as I'm going back and forth, because this year, that particular year, I had to go back and forth from Florida to Colorado 7 times for custody hearings. And then when the third husband filed for divorce, which was not a scriptural divorce, he's the one that filed for divorce. No scriptural grounds. I had to go back 7 times. And the only person who stood up for me was a former Bible study of mine. And I had studied with her like 15 years prior. And she had finally reached the point where she was an unbaptized publisher. And she took me in, she gave me the keys to her house, and she says, my house is your house, and you stay here when you're going back and forth. So the elders talked to her and they said, Dena is an apostate. You cannot have association with an apostate. And she stood up for me and she said, she is not. Nobody loves Jehovah more than Dena does. Nobody does. She is not an apostate. And they removed her as a publisher for that. So that was a huge punch in the gut to me. Her and I cried We both cried, and she's like, I know you love Jehovah. She says, I know you love Jehovah. Nobody loves Jehovah more than you do. So that was another huge punch in the gut because I'm not an apostate. I am now, but I wasn't then. At that point, I was still fully believing that everything's going to work out. You know, this is Jehovah's house. I'm faithful to Jehovah. I love Jehovah. Everything's going to be okay. So let me see what happens next. During the divorce hearings, this is hilarious because this man he's an actor. He's equally as wacko. I actually recorded the initial divorce hearing. I should upload it because the things that he said are just completely insane. He brought an audience of like 5 people to the divorce hearing. I don't know, so they could like cheer him on or something. I don't know. A Bible study and like a couple of other publishers from the congregation. The ego is just, whew. Anyway, so the judge called him on 4 or 5 different outright lies during the court hearing. And she sided in my favor and she awarded me a nice big chunk of alimony money. And so after that, he decides that he's going to withdraw the divorce. So he hires an attorney to write out this legal document that says that it has come to his attention. Now, how's it going to come to his attention? He's been a witness his entire life. At this point, he's like, almost 60 because he was 20 years older than me. This did not just come to your attention. It has come to my attention that because I do not have scriptural grounds for divorce, and he's using these terms in the court document, this is going to impact my relationship with Jehovah. And as I have received advice from the elders in my congregation, I've decided to reconcile with my wife and withdraw the divorce. I'm not even kidding. You can't make this up. You cannot make this up. So I'm like, withdraw the divorce and reconcile with your wife. Well, you haven't even talked to me yet. And the only reason you're doing this is because you don't want to pay alimony.
Yeah.
So I call up the presiding overseer and I'm like, do you see what a mockery this is? Do you not see that this is insulting to Jehovah? That this makes witnesses look really crazy? And he was one of the ones that thought I was an apostate, and he just gets like this dead silence. And I think I might have had a breakdown at that point. I remember I was on the phone with the presiding overseer with this letter in my hand, and I just started laughing. The insanity of what he wrote in this letter was I just started laughing. That was another huge, oh my God, this is a circus. This is not a religion. This is a joke. This is insane. These are our people in charge. This is how we do things. So at that point, I was definitely waking up, I suppose. Well, no, not totally waking up. I still believed it was the truth. I was just mind blown by the insanities that I'm seeing on the inside, by how elders are handling things and how I'm being treated with no validity to it whatsoever. So then when it came to the final custody hearing, he got custody of the kids. And my family, because of the third divorce, they were, not scriptural grounds for divorce. I wasn't even the one that filed for divorce. He was the one that filed for divorce, but somehow that's still my fault. So I'm still not completely mentally out of the religion. Yes. At this point, I'm thinking, something must be wrong with me. Jehovah must just not want me, and then I would hear from the family too. Well, if you'd never left the first marriage, none of this ever would have happened. So that's going on in the back of my head that, maybe Jehovah never forgave me for that. Maybe my sins have not been forgiven. Maybe I'm not humble. Maybe Jehovah just doesn't want me. So I started to fade. I stopped going to meetings because, I mean, it was just it. So my publisher record card had left to the Dominican Republic, and at this point it was in Florida. They hadn't had it very long, and because I think I'd only been there like 2 or 3 weeks or something like that, and this family invited me to go serve unassigned territory in, I think, like South Carolina or something like that. And I thought, I need that because I love preaching. I love people. I loved my religion. And so I went and I did unassigned territory for 2 weeks. It was great. It was great. I had a great time. And when I came back, I get pounced on by my new elders. And they say, that's a privilege and you don't qualify for any privileges because you're separated from your husband. The divorce wasn't finalized at that point. He's like, you're separated from your husband, and what we hear from him is that you're an apostate, and so we can't believe that you just went on unassigned territory without permission. And I'm like,
wait. For you to go into what they call unassigned territory, you had to know what is the unassigned territory. So
they already had this trip planned. Yeah, the congregation already had this trip planned. And then so somebody who was in the group, they were like, come on, sweetheart, just come with us.
Oh, okay. So here's, for those who don't understand this concept, who never went to unassigned territories and stuff like this, the elders obviously want to control the congregation to the core.
To the core.
And, yes. And a person who is going to the unassigned territory, it's kind of like a representative of our congregation and of the organization. So they have to be in like the clean, perfect, good standing. They don't have to be maybe pioneers, but they have to be at least in a good standing. And if they have any dirt on them, like in your case, they put a lot of dirt, and especially the apostate label was like a really big one, then it must have been a real shocker for them. It's like, what is she doing there? Like, how could this have happened? Right? Like, we cannot let this. You can't. You have to ask for those privileges in order to preach. So you can just imagine that that's as crazy as it sounds. I remember when they came up with this not shopping carts, with those cards, right, for the magazines. And people had to apply in order to qualify to stand right next to the cart. And I remember one pioneer sister was denied this because they said she was not an exemplary pioneer. And they refused for it. I'm like, what the heck?
It's insane. It's really
it's
really
the
crazy.
Weirdest thing. You could go preaching, and they cannot stop you from preaching because you obviously qualify as a publisher, and you can go preaching anytime you want. You can go, Friday, Saturday evening to whoever you want. You're supposed to preach door to door. You're supposed to preach at school or at work, whatever, right, on the street. But if there is a special territory, now we need to give you a special qualifications.
If you should only be so worthy. So that was super hard for me because, like I said, I think when someone has sinned and they're disfellowshipped, you at least can kind of justify to yourself, okay, well, I'm getting treated because I sinned, right?
Yeah.
I was not sinning. I was getting pushed out of the congregation. You know what? I wasn't looking for reasons to leave. I wasn't trying to leave. I just got shoved out. So at that point, I'm just like, okay, maybe I'm fighting against Holy Spirit. Maybe Jehovah just doesn't want me. Maybe I've never learned my lesson. Maybe I've never been forgiven. And so maybe I just need to stop trying so hard. Maybe I just need to stop trying to push for justice and righteousness. And, I'm just I give up. I quit. If Jehovah decides he forgives me, then so be it. But clearly something's wrong with me.
Yeah, so you clearly believed in all the doctrines, Armageddon, and all that
Yeah,
stuff,
because
right?
I'm not researching anything outside. I'm only basing it off of my experiences inside of the organization. I'm looking at it for the way that I've been treated by shepherds,
Yes.
how I've been treated as a little sheep, and it was bad. It was horrific. It was and so and then you justify it by saying, well, you know what, there's imperfections happen in the organization, we just have to rely on Jehovah. And I just got to the point where I'm like, okay, there are so many imperfections, I give up. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I've lost everything. I've lost my home in the Dominican Republic. I've lost my job. I've lost my kids. I've lost my reputation. I've lost pioneering. I've lost helping people, which is what I
Yeah.
loved. So
Your sense of belonging, your
I've
identity, who
lost
you
my
are,
friends. You know
all
what? And
this.
it's the shunning. Shunning is one thing, but even aside from the shunning, when I was still in the Dominican Republic and the ex-husband had left us there, we were at a convention, and I had some really close friends. They were retired missionaries in the Dominican Republic, and they're like, "Oh, where's your husband?" And I go, he's got deleted as an elder. He left us here. And these people who were like surrogate parents, surrogate grandparents to me, they were like, oh, no, 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 we can't talk about this because this is gossip. And you could get in trouble for gossip and we could get in trouble for gossip. So how are you? But let's not really talk about anything because that's gossip. And it's horrible. It's horrible because there's no support system inside of the organization. You're supposed to be this worldwide brotherhood, and it is not, because as soon as anybody has any sort of trauma, their bad association or it's gossip, or it's fine to gossip behind somebody's back, but to actually talk with somebody who's going through any sort of trauma is like this taboo. And
Yeah.
you are in a worldwide brotherhood all by yourself. You are alone in a room full, in an organization of 8 million people. You might as well be alone, because even the ones that knew me and weren't buying off on the apostate stuff, like ones from the Dominican Republic, or the ones that invited me to do the serving where the unassigned territory was, they could see me as a sincere Jehovah's Witness. But even then it's like, oh, well, let's not really talk about anything because it's gossip. So the aloneness that you feel, even if you haven't been shunned, is inhuman. It's literally, inhuman. I
I
think.
think it's worse when you're
Mhm.
surrounded by your friends and you feel like you're alone and they don't care about you and your problems. You cannot
Well, because then
authentically
they're
speak to
concerned
people.
about their own reputation.
Yeah, it's a
You
living in
know,
fear to the
yeah.
point where you're afraid of asking your friend about how they're doing.
Well, it's like my Bible study. She got removed as a publisher for supporting me.
That's
You
weird.
know,
Super
I
weird.
mean, and that's a reality too. You have to have good association. If you're a pioneer, you
Mhm.
have to be friends with other pioneers, and don't be careful of the levels of who you're associating with, because if they're privileged, if they don't have privileges, I mean, it's what the
Messed up.
heck?
Messed
It's
up.
a divide. It's a divide and conquer. Keep everybody isolated, apart, segregated. Don't let them talk to each other, because if they talk, they might start figuring stuff out. I mean, it is the definition of insane.
If
So
sorry, go ahead.
no. So I just decided that I was gonna give up, and I was just gonna wait for Jehovah
You-
to call me back or something. So my
Yeah.
deprogramming had not really started yet, even though I then stopped going to meetings.
Usually there's two reasons why people leave this religion. One is they find out the doctrines are wrong. Second,
Mhm.
they get mistreated in the congregation by fellow JWs. In
Mhm.
your case, you believe in the doctrines, but you were mistreated by people inside. So that's first step. And tell me, how did you deprogram your mind? Because people could be mistreated and they left the organization, but sometimes decades later they're still afraid of Armageddon,
Right.
and then they see,
Right.
oh, COVID is happening. Maybe Jehovah's Witnesses were right. Well, I got to go back
Right.
now, right? And
Right.
that happens quite often, as a matter of fact. So,
Yeah.
how did you go? How did you heal from this?
Okay, so going back to when I got married the third time, the only good thing that came out of that marriage was NLP, NeuroLinguistic Programming. So that ex-husband, he was a life coach. He was certified in NLP. And that was the business that we did, was
The third guy or the second guy? Sorry.
The third guy in
the
truth.
JW guy.
The JW.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the JW. So that opened up this whole world of learning to me, because, obviously I'm homeschooled, so that's kind of limited education, not any higher education or anything. I had not really ever learned about psychology or anything like that. So when I met him, he was into psychology. He was very into NLP. And so that opened up this spark in me, and I got certified in NLP, and I was coaching people, and it was like a light just exploded inside of me. I just felt like that's what I'm meant to do. I loved it. I loved it. And funny enough, we were in Utah, and so most of our clients were ex-Mormons. Mormons who had left their religion, trying to reconcile, spirituality with God, and leaving their religion, and our beliefs. Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, our beliefs are very different, but a lot of the structure is very much the same.
The trauma is almost the same.
Yeah, they do shunning. They, high control about dating and what you wear and where you work. I mean, they come from a high control group too. 100%. So this was all the way back in 2005. I'm already helping people integrate coming out of a religion, deprogramming, finding themselves after they lose their circle. And honestly, it was a little bit of a conflict of interest, I suppose, because I'm helping people come to find their spirituality, except I'm a Jehovah's Witness. So maybe I'm kind of like secretly hoping that maybe they study now that they're out of their religion, right? And a lot of the stuff that I was doing with NLP too was working a lot with health issues with people. So through this tool, it teaches, or the worldview from NLP is that when somebody has a physical symptom, like a health issue or something like that, a lot of it comes from the trauma that they're holding inside. It comes from their emotional states. It comes from their beliefs about themselves, about the world, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm helping people heal illnesses, major illnesses, and I got accused of being demonic.
Yeah, I've heard it before in my family.
You're dabbling in hypnosis, and that's demonic. That's right. And you can't do that. Right. And only Jehovah's the only path to anything. And they actually made me stop doing NLP because their opinion was I was going to stumble somebody, and I'm dabbling in things that are demonic, and I'm dabbling in hypnosis, and all that stuff's forbidden. So, but I had those skills, and I had those skills well before my own trauma tragedy happened. I believe, especially now looking back, that when I learned that tool, it opened up a healer spark in me. That I think that's why I was so good at pioneering. I think that's why I loved it so much, is because I love people. I loved helping people. In the religion, that's the way you do it, is by saving their lives, preaching to them, right? But then there was this other tool that I found that was helping me heal and helping me help people. And I always kept those with me even after I stopped doing that professionally because of the religion issues. Okay, so then when I started fading, obviously my whole life fell apart. Like I said, I lost everything. I started coaching myself. I started going through every belief, because sometimes what we believe in the truth, when we're in the truth, it fits as long as you're in the context of the truth.
Yeah,
But if you take
100%.
those and you move it outside, you're in huge trouble, because
Yeah.
if you're in the truth and you believe everybody in the world is bad, well, that works as long as you're in this safe little bubble, right? But now
Yep.
you're in the world, so you have
No,
to
you're the
start
bad
going
one.
through, yeah, you have to start going through all of your beliefs and going, okay, which one of these fits my new life? What do I need to eliminate? What do I need to work on? What do I need to recreate? So when you leave this bubble and you come out into the world, you are not the same person. You can't be the same person. You can't you can't be a Jehovah's Witness in the world. You really have to go through your head, and you have to go through your beliefs, not even spiritual beliefs aside. You have to go through other beliefs, like your beliefs about money, your beliefs about a career that's appropriate, your beliefs about worldly people are evil, your beliefs about dating, all of those, you've got to go through and go, wait a second, does this make any sense at all? Maybe we change our beliefs all the time, because as humans, we're learning, growing creatures. And so it's natural to evolve what our beliefs are, to update our beliefs to what used to work for us maybe doesn't work for us anymore. Maybe we need to update those beliefs. So that was the first thing that I started doing. Your identity is another huge piece to be successful after you leave the religion, because when you're in the religion, you have these identity levels that identify you as who you are. I'm a pioneer. I'm a publisher. I'm an elder's wife. I'm a, whatever. And now you're here outside, and who am I now? You've lost all of these identities. And so you need to figure out who's the new me? What are my new identities that I take on? Even the ones that we carry with us, they get altered, so you're in the religion and you're a mom, you're a sister, you're a daughter, whatever. But because of the shunning, those identity levels don't always work the same anymore either, because you don't feel like a daughter, you don't feel like somebody's sister, because the relationships are fractured.
That's right.
So you've got to go through. So that was what I went through when I was coaching myself. I hadn't even gone down the part of researching to see doctrinally if it was right. I worked on beliefs, behaviors, and the identity levels to adapt to being able to being outside, because I knew that the only way that I'm going to thrive is if I literally reinvent myself, make sure I get rid of limiting beliefs about money, limiting beliefs about what I'm capable of doing, limiting beliefs of how I view myself as a woman, because the world doesn't view women the same way that Jehovah's Witnesses view women. Your voice is able to be spoken louder. Everything's completely different. And had I not had that tool, I don't know what would have become of me, because it was so traumatic losing everything like that. And I had the background of, I was fortunate enough. No, you know what? I'm an apostate. I can say lucky. I was lucky enough to have the NLP background. I was lucky enough that I had already helped people do religious deprogramming. So I already knew kind of what I needed to look for to help integrate. And so I did that at first. And actually, it probably wasn't until about 2 years later that I read Crisis of Conscience. And then I was like, okay, wait a second. I'm actually doing pretty good out here. I never even really thought about this from the doctrinal standpoint.
Right.
And that was when I was like, whoa, wait a second. I was in a cult. Whoa, wait a second. So then that was the final piece of breaking free is when I finally realized.
So interesting. You left because you got mistreated. Then you healed yourself with NLP and your skills as a coach. And then the last piece was the doctrines that
It's a
you
little
got released.
backwards. I think people usually go doctrinally first.
Usually they well, it depends on the person, but usually, yeah, if there's something wrong with the doctrine and they're like, something's wrong here, then because of their questioning, they get mistreated in the congregation. Then they leave and then they heal themselves. And with you, it was a little bit different order. But it's quite fascinating that you went through all those steps.
Well, if, like I said, doctrinally, I still guess I probably believed in Armageddon and everything. And I was just like, well, I'm just going to make the best out of whatever years are left. So I'm going to redo myself, and I'm going to thrive out here until what? I don't know, until Armageddon, but there was other factors too, because I knew too that if the kids ever decided that they wanted to come back or anything like that, I needed to have my life together. I can't just be some, crying, sobbing, balled up in a corner wreck. I need to have my life together. So shortly after I left, after I did my healing, my deprogramming, I met my fourth husband.
Woohoo! Numbers are growing.
He's a wonderful man. And so when we met, he says, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to sell real estate." And he says, "All right, let's do it." And so we dedicated ourselves. We worked super hard for 7 years. I told him from the beginning, I said, I do not want to live in the United States forever. I loved living in the Dominican Republic. I loved Mexico. Not to mention, I can never afford to retire in the United States because I don't have any career retirement. I don't have any of that looking forward to me. At that point, I was 38. So at 38, that was when I had gone through the third divorce, literally starting all over from a backpack. I'm not even kidding, from a backpack, because when we left the Dominican Republic, we came back with backpacks. So it was literally starting all over. So when I told him, I want to move out of the country. That's the goal. I want to work. I want to save up some money, and I want to retire in a place where it's a lot more affordable. And so that's what we did. 2.5 years ago now, I think July will be 3 years, we moved to Ecuador. We bought 40 acres right on the edge of the Amazon. So we built a house, we built an organic farm, and this is where we live. And so currently here, the fun thing that we're doing is I combine the NLP coaching with plant medicine. Specifically ayahuasca, San Pedro, and psilocybin.
That's fantastic.
That's a different twist.
Those are usually the things that JWs are really afraid of, any of this ayahuasca stuff. People who don't know what it is, I do know what it is, but please explain what's ayahuasca, what are those plants medicine? Does it have anything to do with demons, past lives, and all the things that are happening that while you experience this?
Yeah, exactly. So this is my advice for anybody who's out there listening who has beliefs or they've heard about how dangerous this stuff is. Who told you that?
The person who never
tried. The religion? Because if you're hearing it from the religion, you definitely need to take it with a grain of salt. Governments, I'm not like this conspiracy kind of person, but even that, there's a reason why these kind of things have a bad rap. A lot of it comes from maybe misuse of it in party settings decades ago. But basically, these are 100% natural plants that have grown on our planet for thousands of years, that have been used in spiritual ceremonies by indigenous people for thousands of years, and for good reason. They are some of the most healing therapeutic medicines I think I have ever come across. You've got your right brain and you've got the left brain, right? So you've got a highly logical, rational, reasonable side. And then we have our emotional, spiritual, creative side of the brain. What happens in life is we tend to favor the practical side. We tend to favor the logical side. We live in a very physical, literal world where we have to think, reason, etc. It kind of creates an imbalance in the brain because we're not accessing the emotional side, the creative side, the spiritual side, anywhere as near as much as we are the logical side, right? So what these plant medicines do is they really break down the barrier that separates the right left brain, and they let them explode together. So what it does is it opens up this level of creativity, emotion, spirituality, while at the same time you're very coherent and logical. I mean, it's not like you're drunk. Alcohol is not therapeutic.
No.
Alcohol is not therapeutic, but these are actually, psilocybin is well documented that it increases neuroplasticity. It creates new neural pathways. I mean, it's an amazing resource that, in my opinion, is divine. And if I heard me saying this 10 years ago, or if I were audience hearing me say this, I would be like, she's crazy. Or, that, okay, I was every bit as hardcore witness as anybody ever was. And the abilities of these medicines to connect us with our spiritual side, it's beautiful. Religion, I believe religion forbids these kind of things because religion wants to be the only conduit to God. They want to control your access to privileges, everlasting life. They want to be your link to spirituality or divinity or whatever. But the truth is, like I said, these plants have been around for thousands of years, been used in spiritual settings. And when they're used in a therapeutic spiritual session, the effects that somebody can have, the effects in your life are profound. I mean, psilocybin can cure addictions in just one session. Serious addictions, heroin, codeine, alcoholism.
Wow.
One session, the brain is rewired and the problem's just not there anymore. The healings that people have with being able to release trauma and stuff like that. I mean, other trauma too, not just addictions, but abuse or, whatever other traumas people have are. It's so freeing. So, people will hear about bad trips or, bad experiences or something. I've probably guided up to around 200 guided trips on the plant medicines as of right now. And I'll tell you, not one of them has had a bad trip. They've had some intense experiences, but it's like I tell people that what the plants don't do anything to you. They don't give you anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's what you already have inside. So if you have a very intense experience, it's not because the plant made it intense. It's because you're already living with that every day. You just don't know it. The plant is giving you the space to release whatever you have on the inside. And so in my experience with my NLP background and the plant medicine, that just takes it to a whole other level because I'm there to be able to guide people through the journey as their brains are creating their new neuroplasticity and as they're releasing emotions. I'm there to be able to help them stay grounded, to be able to work through whatever emotions come up. Let's get it out. I make the set and the setting anytime you're taking any plant medicine is hugely important. So, we've got the beautiful 40 acres here. We've got the mountains, we've got the river. That all helps give you a very safe place. It's not the kind of thing that you just want to, you know, take on a whim or take in a place where you're not maybe going to be safe for the next 6 or 8 hours. And then afterwards, we do an integration process where whatever the experience is brought to our attention, we want to make sure that we integrate any of those experiences. And it's really, really, really life-changing. It's amazing. I mean, and like I said, these are it's 100% natural. They're not addictive. There's no negative side effects. It's crazy to me, literally crazy to me, that the religion can be completely okay with alcohol, lots of alcohol.
Well, let me ask you this. You were in Spanish worlds, having so many Bible studies, helping people join their religion. How do you compare now what you're doing with helping people versus what you were doing before? Do you find it more fulfilling? Do you find it more joyful? Because I understand when you believed to be a witness, you also had joy having those Bible stories. You also had joy of you know, having the people interested one, studying with them and being in service. You wanted to do this. It gave you some sort of fulfillment as a person and purpose. How do you compare what you do now compared to what you were doing before?
Now I'm really healing them. Whereas before, I mean, like you said, I loved helping people. A lot of the times with Spanish people too, I wasn't just teaching them the religion. A lot of them, I had to go back to the basics and teach them how to read. You know, we had this brochure with the alphabet, and because there are a lot of people, illegal immigrants, not all of them have any sort of education or anything. So I found that very fulfilling, teaching people how to read. They all love the Bible anyway. So, you know, teaching them about the Bible, that felt like the good thing to do.
Of course.
But then at the same time, I had many women that had opposed husbands. Their husbands didn't want them coming into the truth. Their husbands didn't want them going to meetings and dragging the kids to meetings. You know, so that was, I struggled with that a lot, knowing that their husband was going to be mad at them. You know, after I got a driver's license, I would be picking up Bible studies and they'd be concerned because the husband was upset. And you know what, that was hard. It was hard being, you know, you want to encourage them to serve Jehovah, but at the same time, you're dividing their household, you know?
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
If you don't bring the whole family, you bring half of the family, then
yeah, I know. It was a hard position to be in. And then when I was in the Dominican Republic, so the Dominican Republic shares the island with Haiti. So we actually were in a Haitian congregation when we were in the Dominican Republic. We all learned Haitian Creole and we were in the Haitian congregation in the Dominican Republic. And that was a whole other experience too, because Haiti is the most impoverished country in our hemisphere. So you're helping people that are literally the poorest people in our hemisphere.
Yeah.
Almost all of them had to be taught to read. So I guess somehow, in a lot of ways, I didn't feel like I was just helping them religiously. I was helping them in a humanitarian sense in a lot of ways, because, you know, I'm teaching them how to read. And like I said, the NLP learnings for me really opened up my heart to a whole world of healing that I didn't know was in me. So when I was in the Dominican Republic, I would translate for Haitians in the hospital because they're in the Dominican Spanish hospital. They don't speak Spanish. And so I would volunteer there, and I got in huge trouble for that, because you can't do that as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. You're making rice Christians. If you help people and they're not going to meetings, you're not. That's not how we do it. You know how Jehovah's Witnesses are, right? Yeah. Somebody's drowning and they try to save them with a watchtower. They're not actually going to do anything for anybody.
I love it. You're 100% right. It's like, would you accept this? Yes, okay. Then I'll
Yeah,
pull
hey,
you
do you
out.
need help?
You don't
Okay,
want the
go to
watchtower? Oh, sorry. My hand is a little too short.
You're starving to death. Oh, okay, go to the meeting.
Yeah, oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. But Dina, tell me this. There's a lot of people who are stuck in the watchtower, who are what we call PIMOs, right?
Yeah.
And what would you tell to those PIMOs, people who are physically in, they're mentally out, but they're terrified because they believe that if I speak out, if I say anything, I'm going to lose my husband, I'm going to lose my kids, I'm going to lose my identity, I'm going to lose all my friends. They're so afraid of that loss. And at the same time, they say, I don't have anything outside of the organization. I don't have any friends. I don't have any career. I don't have anything. You went through this process so many times of losing a husband, gaining another one, losing a husband, gaining another one, and losing the kids and changing a country. What would you tell them?
Okay. So, first of all of those people that you're afraid of losing, you've already lost them. You don't have them anyway. Because their love for you is conditional. Their love for you is dependent on you being subservient and staying completely obedient to whatever comes out of Watchtower's mouth this week. That is not true love. I know it feels like true love because I at one time thought that that was true love too, true friendship. I miss my family as much as anybody does. But you know what? That love is not real. It feels like it's real because that's the only thing that you have right at this moment. But the truth is that the real truth is that once you're on the outside, there are beautiful people out here. I have more beautiful friends and more loyal adopted family than I ever did in the religion. And that's the truth. The truth is that you're hanging on to something that's a fraction of what you deserve.
Wonderful. Thank you. So the next question I have is, what about the pomos who are outside of the religion? Maybe they were disfellowshipped and they're trying to get back in, or they're simply suffering because they're so resentful to what took place. I'm pretty sure you have a long list of reasons why you should be resentful towards JWs and what took place.
Mm-hmm.
How do you let go of that? How do you forgive? How do you heal? How do you say, you know what, this happened in the past, but I'm moving forward? How do you do that?
You need therapy.
No, it's true. It's true. And
I'm sorry, you need therapy. Unless you're a therapist, unless you know how to deprogram religious trauma, you need somebody to help you deprogram it. Because there's things in your mind that's holding you back that you don't even know is holding you back. You don't even know
100%.
the programming that is controlling your actions, your head. So I talked when I went through my own deprogramming, the beliefs, your identity, all of those things, you have to go through and you've got to get that out of your head, because otherwise it's affecting your job. It's affecting your ability to find friends on the outside. Affecting your ability to keep friends. It's affecting your ability to trust people on the outside. I mean, you cannot integrate unless you have a clean slate. You absolutely, you need to get help, because we don't even know what's holding us back. We're the same people we've always been, right? So unless you have a psychology background or something, you don't understand what programs you've got going on in the back of your mind that are affecting your life today, your lack of ability to integrate. So that's really the advice that I give. You need to find religious deprogramming help.
Fantastic. And I would strongly recommend talking to people who are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. There are therapists who are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, plenty of them. There are tons of coaches who can help because they will truly understand what's going on. And I've heard many times.
Very true.
People,
very true.
People are saying, I went through a therapy. The last 10 years I've been in therapy and I'm still struggling.
Yeah.
But then they talk to somebody that I talked to many, but they told me like, oh, you know what? 1 hour with you gave me more than 10 years of therapy. And
It's
it's
true.
not because the therapist was a bad therapist. It's just the therapist had no idea what it means to be a witness, how deep that stuff goes. And I could sympathize and understand their pain, but at the same time, I know which path I took to get out of this hell. And I just say, okay, this is what I did. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You follow the same path, you will have the same results. While the therapist is like listening, like, what these people do? Like, are you serious? Like, they don't even have the concept of it.
Not just any therapist, because you'll go to somebody who doesn't know about Jehovah's Witnesses and you're like, oh, I'm disfellowshipped. My family doesn't talk to me. And they're going to be like, oh, well, you know what? Let's just try talking to them. No, that's not going to work at all. Then you're trying to explain what disfellowshipping is.
Exactly.
And you spend more time explaining your religion than you do deprogramming your religion.
100%. And then you start blaming yourself, or something's wrong with you.
Exactly.
Right? Or the worst, then you start blaming somebody else. Oh, this organization did this for me. Now you're a victim and you feel hopeless because something happened to you.
Exactly.
And you cannot move forward if something was done to you. And this is how I am, and that's it. Right?
Yeah.
So now the dog is even confirming. He says, yes, that's true.
He agrees. Yeah,
Fantastic.
definitely get help. There is no shame in getting help either. I mean, there is deep brainwashing that needs to be unrooted. So definitely do not hesitate to find somebody to help you figure out the mess of programming that you've got in your mind from being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And not even just the belief side, but the emotional side, like you said, feeling like a victim, holding on to the resentment. We have justified resentment. We are completely justified in feeling that way. Okay, but it's not helpful to stay that way. We need to let it go. Those I know people that have left, and I talk to them and I'm like, oh, so how long have you been out? Thinking that it's been like 5 or 6 months. And they'll be like, oh yeah, 25 years ago. Whoa, wait a second. They're still talking as though that happened yesterday. Yes. That's not thriving. I mean, you come out to thrive, to live your life and to thrive, not to live all this time and all of this resentment. I mean, it's not necessary. Just because it's justified doesn't mean that it's healthy and thriving by living that reality after you've left.
Thank you very much for all your story. It was absolutely incredible. And the fact that you went through all this and came out on top with that kind of a smile on your face, and my life is 100 times better now. I mean, that inspires, because we can sit here and talk about, we can sit here all day long, talk about all the bad things that are happening among JWs. But what is the most important is how you came out of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The comeback. Because that is the most important, because people are so afraid of leaving or taking that leap of faith because they're thinking it's gonna be worse. If I leave, it's gonna be worse. Yes, it will be worse for a moment, but you will rebuild your life. The first year is the worst, but then later on it's better and better.
Well, and I think what was really the huge eye opener for me was, I lost everybody, but what were they worth? I mean, they weren't an actual support system. Friends are there for you when you have a problem, and they scurry when there's a problem. You know, friends hold your hand. They rally to you when there's a problem. And that's what's on the outside. That's not on the inside. You know, people who love you for you, no matter what. They love you if you get a tattoo. They get a tattoo, or if you whatever it is that you do. Oh, your skirt's a little too short. We're going to judge you now. No, that's not real. So what you're afraid of losing is not real. I mean, I know you love them. I know you do, because I loved my people too. I loved them too. But you don't lose something that's real. You just find it on the other side. And I promise you really do. You really do.
Yeah. I always say that if you have a choice between losing the people in your life or losing yourself, lose the people.
Yes, 100%. And the way that the religion creates behaviors is toxic. It is shunning is toxic. Even if you're not shunned, threatening that they might shun you is toxic. That's toxic. And you don't need toxic in your life. You don't need to be that's what they're doing. That's why they create the disfellowshipping process. It's so that you live in fear and that you stay trapped. And you know what? I don't care how much you love them. The behavior of the religion is damaging. It's highly damaging. It's toxic, and it is stopping you from living a true, authentic life full of people that really support you, really have your back, and you're cutting yourself short. You're missing out.
I'll end it with that. Beautifully stated. Thank you very much, Dena. Appreciate it.
Okay.